No, it's your Taurus Eddie. That loud enough? Too loud?
Perfect.
And my request for the analyzers in the room, get out of your chairs and shake it like you're gonna break it. I'm not an analyzer, so. Hey, for the promoters in the room, we're gonna get crazy when it drops. Well, get ready. It's coming. We got
Sing it, 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 sing it.
drop it.
The chills that you spill up my back keep me filled
Monica
with
disappeared.
satisfaction.
Where'd
when
Monica
we're done,
go?
Satisfaction of what's to come.
She got down.
I couldn't ask for another. Your groove.
Kind of a lull. This wasn't the drop.
Watch out.
Gotta work up a sweat from top.
He can't be sold. He's not vicious or malicious, just lovely and delicious. I couldn't ask for another.
I'm taking a seat. Don't sweat.
Ever have I seen an earth girl quite like you? You excite my receptors and make my electrodes through. With an overpowering magnetic field, I wish to satisfy your dreams. And with an enormous rhythm pulsating, girl, you've got to scream. Pass me that bottle.
She didn't tell me it was 18-minute dance.
I know. No, it wasn't.
Get my steps in.
It was 4.5 minutes. I'm like,
Cardio.
well, we're winding that down, and we just stopped a minute early. We're all old. We just said how old we are. We're not going clubbing.
Perimenopause or
Like I got seriously
can't cool down.
good cool. Hot flashes. Nope, not going to the club tonight. Not going to the club tonight. Woo, fantastic. All right.
This is where Meta Power Metabolic Blend helps because it gives you the chance to get more.
Metabolic
Oh.
blend. Let me make a
This
note.
video is sponsored by.
Yeah. Video is sponsored by coffee.
Yeah, coffee, a little doTERRA, and water.
Yeah.
Oh, and hormones.
That's it.
This is that mushroom thing. Coffee, Monica.
Chaga.
I know. I want to try that.
What is that? Well, it's not the Organifi stuff. It's the other one. The one that had
Yeah,
like
it's
four colors.
stigmatic. If you
There.
ever come to my place, I'm gonna serve you that if you feel like it. It's not gonna have
Sigmatic?
secondary effects. It's just gonna giving a zup in the moment. No.
I love shrooms.
Does everybody have a coffee cup this morning?
Manila.
All
I have the
right.
plastic corporate
Corporate trash. There it is.
goddess
Well,
goddess of the sea.
And he said, "Fuck the ocean."
So this is just cheers to us this morning, having a lovely conversation, popcorn style.
I love Bill's long. What do you drink there, Bill?
Man, I
Yeah,
feel like
I go. This actually came in a hot chocolate gift set, but it's the perfect
Yeah.
kind of large coffee size. And it's funny because Shelly, so this would be another interesting discussion. Tall or wide?
wide.
Right? Well, I'm a tall coffee cup guy, but a lot of people are wide coffee cup
Wide.
people.
Tall
Yeah, so
and wide. So what is that? I have
Both
the
I
cup
don't
I
like
usually
tall ones
drink
because
out
I
of.
feel like
Kinda
I'm
like
gonna
this
knock it
one.
over.
I'm
Yes,
not gonna
yes.
say anything.
Monica, I was trying to set you up for a softball.
It was
Oh,
was
Monica's like,
literally
I'm
there.
drinking my
Like,
coffee.
look at Monica's
literally
cup
there.
versus my cup. You know, I mean, there's like
They eat. They both
significant.
have intended and unintended consequences.
She's like, my husband may watch this video.
I'll tell Kirk later.
People were hurt in the making of this. No,
Yeah.
no, yes, that's correct, Jen. My cup, like when you're holding your cup up, it's like the size of your head on screen. I have one like that. That's like a whole. I feel, a whole press into. So
Maybe the next time we could do wine glasses. You know.
ooh, wine before 9.
Here's to a couple months from now when we're all holding a tantaMAS cup.
There
And
you
cheers.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's coming. That's coming. Let me put
Fuck
that on.
yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, so I want to start this conversation because we know behind the scenes, I'm gonna pull real life into this conversation. We want to kind of jump into, we're all watching our lives pass us by day in and day out in the world around us and so on. And we know from our experience in leadership what the concept of level 4 responsibility, we've heard it, we've probably lived into it, we've probably played with it. We have, on the other hand, though, broken this down in many different ways and really tried to do some deep dive, looking at it and how this shows up in our lives. I want to kind of call out and let Bill share like a real life experience that's going on so that we can kind of just dig into how you're feeling, how this shows up for you, like the ways that we struggle. Actually, I'll just call that out right now, the ways we struggle with being responsible in all the different ways. So can you just share a little bit?
Sure.
Yes,
Sure.
just
Put
jump
me on
in.
the spot.
I'm putting you right on the spot.
That's what I get for sharing. I'll tell you what comes up for me. So I'll tell the story as I walk through everything. But sitting in an emergency room for 4 hours last night, no one was badly hurt. Just the video people know. It came to me that, boy, it is really easy to sit in level 4 responsibility when you're having a good day. But when things start going south, that's when the struggles of really being in a position where you show up as responsible, literally believing in your heart and inside of you that you show up responsible for everything. So you have your beautiful day going by, and then suddenly your oil furnace dies and your down basement floods and your carpets flood. And okay, it was old. I can be positive about this. I am responsible for it, certainly. I'm not going to let it drag the rest of my day down. A short time later, your wife or significant other throws her back out to such a level that you've got to go to the emergency room. And of course, now this is where it starts for me, right? I have spent many an hour in an emergency room over my life, as has most people that have raised 3 boys and have elderly parents. And we all are fully aware that in the majority of emergency rooms, when you go, your visit is not going to be a wonderful experience of check in, be seen right away, efficiency, check out, really great care. The care was excellent, by the way, I won't say that, but the time factor is going to get you. And as the paramedics are taking my poor wife strapped to a board, sitting up because she can't move, my level 1 responsibility in my head was, oh, I'm going to have to go sit through 5 or 6 hours. I won't get home till 4 a.m. And I know this emergency room is going to be a disaster. What does that, of course, do? That forces that exact scenario to play out, right? And I mentally worked very hard to focus on outwardly being at least level 3 while my head was in level 1. I outwardly was trying to not exude, not show any sort of the frustration, the anger, the victimhood that I was feeling. And the thing plays out, and I'm sitting in the hospital room, and I know we're going to have this conversation today. And that's why I started thinking about it. As I'm looking around people in a hospital, and somebody passed away while we were there, and I saw their family come in and go, right? Perspective is a thing, right? There was a young woman who probably had a drug addiction, and she was wandering the halls, kind of walk off stuff. They were walking with her and stuff. She was making all sorts of crazy sounds. Of course, you see lots of elderly people, and having lost my dad recently and having spent 5 days with him in the hospital, you have that experience. So you take all that in and you bubble that into the 4 levels of responsibility, and you start to realize that it's very easy to say, I am responsible for everything, but it's really hard to stay there all of the time. And unless you take the time to look around you and see what's happening in the world, which is what served me last night to bring me back to level 4. So as I was in the emergency room, standing next to my wife, and I had my stepdaughter there, as the hours went by, instead of getting more frustrated, I actually was able to shift into level 3 and then ultimately level 4, where I was the gift in the room and I was exuding the energy of hope and being positive and being loving. But it's interesting how it's just so easy to struggle, and how easy it is to drop back from being where you want to be when life gets lifey.
So here's something that came up, Bill, when you shared this initially for anybody who's watching, right? We knew this was going on for you. And one of the things that came up, and you've just said it to a degree, the awareness that I was having around some of the struggle that happens with full responsibility and really seeing everything as an opportunity that's showing you something really, right, in its perspective. What came up as I was like, wow, how often are we struggling with the feeling that's underneath that we don't express, that we get stuck in the thinking about what should or shouldn't happen, or why is this happening, right? And instead of just dropping into like, oh, I feel really like bummed out because you have a trip coming up, you have, right, and you had a household thing, there's money involved, there's time involved, there's like having to shift the mind to go, well, now what? But the feelings underneath. So I'm really curious to see what anybody else has to say about that. I was like, do we struggle with the feeling underneath that we don't just let move through us before we get to, okay, now how do I approach this with my new perspective? Or why am I staying fixed to this? What does anybody else have to
So
like?
what the thing that comes up for me right away is the intellectualizing of these anyway, right? Putting them on 4 different levels so you can teach them, bring awareness to them. It's all happening up here in the head, right? And then it takes us out of the moment and brings us to our head. So we go, okay, where's that staircase? I know level 4 is up there somewhere, right? And we start going through these intellectual processes that move things out of the way, because that's the practice, right? And what I hear you sharing is it possible to just feel your way through it? And the example that came up for me was riding my motorcycle. So 2 years ago, when I took my motorcycle riding lessons, it was like learning how to drive all over again. What speed am I going? What's happening on the road? All of these things to gear shift. And now the more I'm on it, the more I'm out there with it. I know what gear I'm in just by what's happening in my body, just by what's happening around me. I'm in it. I don't have to go, how many times did I do that? Where was I last time I stopped? All these intellectual pieces of shifting gears. And that's what it feels like sometimes when I'm tapped into the 4 levels is I'm over intellectualizing it and I'm not just tapping into what my body already knows about the concept of it.
Now, like we have in our chat, we can quickly, if we wanted to. I didn't want to stay in us going over the 4 that we're all familiar with from leadership. But let us, if anyone wants to bring one forward and go, this is how it's showed up for me. Like there could be a recent, situation with one, because I think the value add, and Jen, what you'd brought forward too, that's coming from an exchange methodology and thinking, right? These two, they go together very interestingly, and one feels more linear, like Daryl was just saying this, like, I have steps. Am I in 1? Am I in 2? Am I in 3? Am I in 4? Am I in 1? And where just that we find different moments in our life that immediately we can see, like, oh, it was easy to kind of be in that, like, different level, and what brings that on, because I'm curious from each of you too how that shows up in your life. Do you notice that you're like, wow, that type of circumstance puts me right in victimhood almost instantly, or do you not do that anymore? Just how is it showing up for you? Because the getting into the conversation around is something a demand, because I want somebody to talk. I want Jen or Monica to talk into that a little bit more about the demand and resource part of us, because I think it beautifully expands what was experienced through leadership to give more context to. So I don't want to call, you guys get to jump in because you're all awesome peeps. So
I'm going to go back to your earlier question that Daryl also added to the answer that I was thinking about, because you're right. For me, the 4 levels help me process it from, like, sense making approach, right? But what you're talking about is we have a automatic reaction that, from feelings like it, because if we couldn't express ourselves, like, what are the other ways that it's going to come up? And usually it's how we feel, what we feel in our heart, what we feel in reaction to something, or how well we've been able to respond to things that are out of our norm. So, to Bill's point earlier, like, it's great when I know what I can be in control of, but it's really when it's out of my control what happens. And I think it's really important to me, like, as we're talking about this, that we don't, or Eddie, you're coming into my mind right now, that we honor that we have the feelings that come up. Because if we only look at, oh, you're in your feelings right now, well, you're out at well, you need to step it up, because, like, you're not at level 4 right now. Like, well, you just dismissed my shit that was happening inside of me. Like, maybe I need to get that out of the way in order for me to also acknowledge there's an opportunity to ascend from where I'm at. And sometimes we have to have the things that happen in our life happen in order for us to see what possibilities there are, to where we can ascend to, so to speak, or transcend to. I think that was, like, the word that came up last week in the thing, meaning the conference we were at.
transcend, yeah,
Monica, like, there's transformation, but then there's,
transcendence.
transcending. And so over time, it can be practiced where we're not going to sit in level 1. So I think that that's an opportunity. I think that's important to share here right now. And how that show has shown up for me is like, oh, there's that feeling. Oh, there's that trigger. And how do I want to respond to it? Which I think is the next important question that this framework has provided for me over the years, and being able to practice it. Because the bottom line is, just because you know it doesn't mean you're going to live at the top. Or let me say that for myself. You're always going to be there. To say that, you this is where you always are would ignore a lot of the things that happen to have you realize, to have me realize that I can be in level 4. I can choose from level 4. And so there's a whole honoring of one's choice along this timeline, or this linear view of it, that is allowed. So I love that you brought up that question, and I'll let someone else take over, because I know I can go on for this subject. Okay.
Well, and really quickly, I want to interject as this thought process is going around, like that in leadership, we understand level 4 is, I am responsible for everything. And as Daryl and I and Eddie in our circles of like really breaking this down, I'm like, I think that phrasing actually sets people up for a like, what the F do you mean I'm responsible for everything versus everything is really happening for me to learn and grow from or just to experience. Period. Like no more I caused, because that responsible for everything triggers a lot of people with the like, what do you mean I, because if you sourced it, and just softening some of the words sometimes doesn't take away the meaning of it. So like those are those kinds of conversations, that's like, well, let's break this down further than what you get to experience in that small space and time. So I want to kind of interject that in how things have shown up for each of you too, about like how you've either rephrased something for others, potentially, maybe not even just for yourself, but for others, when you've coached or shared or just been in with family. So I wanted to put that in there.
Yeah.
Let's go.
And one of the things, like, this is really why we're even in tantaMAS, why we've created tantaMAS and the space for tantaMAS, right? This structure works, right? We know in traditional transformation, this structure works. It gets people, they're aware of it. They've never been aware of it, maybe, right? And we don't want to break that. We don't want to blow it up. But what we want to do is go, now what do we want to do it? What's there so much more of that, right? How else can you see it? What do you want to do with it? How do you want to live it? Because I love this, conversation, because right away I moved it from the 4 levels. As Jen was talking, I went back to Bill's story about how he's like, inside I was still feeling level 1, out pushing out of me, I was doing the level 3 thing. But to see it as a almost a globe that you were expanding into rather than a set of stairs I was climbing up, and that simultaneously this one thing may be happening where I'm showing up level 1 in response to it, and then the other thing's happening and I'm showing up level 3 in response to it, and they're happening in the same exact moment. And they're not different from each other. It's not an overarching, oh, I'm always level 4 everywhere.
I have a question for Monica, because I know this is something she and I have talked about in the past. And when Jen and Monica were pushing stuff in the chat about the exchange thing, one of the things that like was aha to me in all of this was this notion of how do you exactly, how do you recognize what level you're actually operating in? And how do you stop, or how do you shift? How do you recognize and shift it? And one of the things Monica and Jen wrote is this notion of, well, are you sucking energy out of the room, or are you filling the room with energy? Because if you're sucking any energy out of the room, you're up in level 1. And the more you're out there giving, the more you're shifting to level 4. And Monica, I know this is something you and I have talked about in the past. I'd love your thoughts.
Now the juices are flowing. Yeah, when I look at these levels of responsibility through the lens of energy, then it becomes much more approachable for me, because the energy, each thought has a certain energy towards it. And I consider level 4 as something we strive for, and a space in which we know there's many more possibilities for significance, for reinterpretation, for new possibilities, for just surrendering. And that is the space for non-judgment. And for me to move there, I have to move through all the other things that will take me there, whether it is frustration, and then conflict, and then forgiveness, acceptance, and finally, joy and wisdom. I mean, because we each are endless sources of energy, when how should I put it? Because Bill, you said it better than me. If I want to be in contribution, my energy is the biggest gift I have, and is the biggest asset I have. So if I am in my victimhood, I feel like I have no power, no energy, then I become the attention sucker and all the things that I need in order to go there. As I go up the ladder of responsibility, I'm noticing I can harness my energy, I can resource myself, in order to create what I deem to be most important. And that's where if I can turn a demand into a resource, and that's the power of consciousness. And level 4 responsibilities in when you are in your consciousness at the level of awareness that you can change anything, how can you shift the need, which is the pressure, the stress, the change in the environment that makes you feel like, why is this happening? Why is this water heater giving up on me now? Why is my wife experiencing so much pain and I cannot support her? Is how can I be in service right now for those around me that could benefit from me and myself? And this is where you said something, Bill. How can I show in level 4 when I'm in level 1? And that's where it doesn't work, because if I'm not working through it and I'm not saying, okay, what do I need right now in order to feel that? Because if I'm just showing it, this is where I'm at odds with how I learned it the first time, because it's my thoughts where I get to be to deny my feelings. And that doesn't work, because my feelings will determine the energy I am putting out there and the influence I have. So yeah,
So
make
let me, yeah, Monica, thank you. Cause I was gonna call you forward too and be like, Monica, I see you over there. All the things are going. What comes up for me is this step beyond, and here's where I want to go, because what you're saying is so powerful. So Jesus, so that like we're all going to have our internal reaction responses, and that's all dependent on what our conditioning and wounds and yada yada, all that inform that. So we're so unique and individual that way. We can understand that there's a playground, this structure kind of to go see where am I standing right now in this reaction through the level 1, 2, 3, 4 as a way of seeing it. And then where you're going about like level 4, are we living there all the time? Probably not. Is how accessible does it become? And then what you're saying about the energy of us, feelings are not the truth. Feelings are indicators about what's going on for us. So when I was saying about moving an emotion through us, right? It's not to hold it as truth. It's the thing that's informing us. So I'm going, okay, what's next step on what do you believe is the way someone can take, again, this understanding, put it into practice, which becomes what's the next step? If there's a step, I don't think it's a step, but on is there some tip, is there some stuff we can contribute in, like how is it that and maybe this is for you, Monica, how do you move this energy for you so that then too we have to acknowledge sometimes when we should not be doing a thing, like, and what's that, because that's that next step. Always saying we can just source energy and always be there is true. And then also I'm a big advocate for allowing people to understand what's theirs and not theirs as well, and learning to really attune and align. And this never addresses that. So I kind of want to lob that into the room and be like, all right, what else in addition to how do you gauge, instead of just always being available to everything in level 4, or that you are source and you have enough energy to push out and be the goodness in the room, how do you walk people through them understanding something may be theirs and may not be theirs, and not through the feeling modality, like you were saying?
Well, Shelley, I'm curious about something because I don't understand part of the question. So for me last night, being the supporter, having a lot of supporter energy in me, being in that emergency room and watching what was going on around me and the suffering and the struggling and people all sharing their worst moments, that allowed me to process my feelings and shift.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
not sure where what was mine and what's not mine fall into that, so to speak.
No,
So I'd love
yeah.
some definition.
Yeah, well, again, this would be circumstantial too, right? Like this just starts to become a broader question about how we find, and we can each individually find this in ourselves, where we may show up to things, to people, to situations that we go, I actually don't, this isn't mine. This is just really a question, because to your point, Bill, you were in the hospital with your wife. You're not going to be like, this ain't mine. This is overwhelming. I'm out. It's just this deeper question. Go ahead, Jen. Like,
Yeah. Well, I think there's two things that come up for me. One, and Monica, you'll probably be able to expound on this better. Okay, so I'm gonna say this from like a mom perspective. And so for the parents out there, well, I'll even say the non-parents, because like Monica, I know you have a fur baby. Sometimes we, well, you're also a bonus mom, so like I take that back. Okay. Some one of the things we learned like this year, Monica and I in our, exchange trainings, is that you can be your resourcefulness because of your energy, your commitment, your stand for the world, all of that can actually be a demand on others. And so like I'm saying that from a parent perspective because I'm like, oh, I gotta go like give them the lesson versus them learn the lesson. And then I see the overwhelm and I feel my frustration and I'm like, why is this not landing, or whatever that looks like. But because my commitment is driven from like, oh my God, I only have so much time that if you don't learn this lesson, I'm like worried about like your life, the rest of your life in the world once, you leave, right? And so, or once I leave or whatever that circumstance would be. So like, for me, I'm like, okay, like I feel like I gotta operate here. So that way, I can take care because it doesn't always show up that way. So like in Bill, like I think about, your situation and how you were able to see these other perspectives. Like, there's well-intentioned actions that we're taking toward what we know we can do. And then and sometimes we don't know what they are until we have that other perspective. And so that whole, like in the commitment of being resourceful, you can actually be more of a demand than a resource is one thing. And that can be energetically, that can be emotionally, that can be, intellectually, all the things in between, right? So that's one. But then the other part of it too is going back to what Monica said. It's also because I'm committed to what I want to create in my life and what I envision for the world and the other leadershipy principles, for lack of a better way to say them, but with love. That we also want to recognize we got to meet people where they're at. And so as well as ourselves, because if we're not doing that, then and be kind of like, how do I be level 1 and level 4 at the same time? It's like, okay, well, meet yourself where you're at, honor, like, okay, wow, this is like, I'm freaking out. I'm upset. I'm frustrated. Like, why the fuck now? Like I'm leaving, ooh, sorry. We're leaving in 4 days, on this vacation, like why world, right? To like, wait a minute, how can I still make the most of what we're going on, knowing that, yeah, I can have these feelings and wait a minute, what's the bigger version of who I really get to be for what I really want to create, right? So those are like, I think the things that in this different level of awareness that we have access to and we are committed to practicing that will be challenged by that question constantly.
Jen, can I jump in here? Because
Yeah,
this
go
is
for it. I saw your
where what level 4 responsibility gives us is our ability to choose how we want to feel. And that is triggering for a lot of us because we think we would not honor a certain feeling if we would shift to another feeling. And it's just the way we interpret it because we deem something to be true in a moment and we stick to it. And our ability in level 4 is just to reframe it in order to become supportive rather than conflicting. And when that occurs, we are already up there in 3 or 4. We just don't even think about it because my willingness to even evaluate what is and see, is this supporting me right now? Because if it's not, how can I reframe this so that, because I'm obviously seeing it a certain way because I'm attached to something, either something that I didn't want to occur and occurred, either something that, and therefore when I'm surrendering to what is, I gotta be in level 4 because I'm no longer in judgment for what is. And to me, that's where sometimes there's a second or a very little time that we are there, but that allows us then to see new possibilities because only in creativity we can design a new solution. That's why to be in an innovative space, to be in possibility means I get to shift out of my frustration, surrender to what is, and tap into my creativity to perceive what is or as something that supports me. I know I'm saying a lot, and it's about when we realize that we have the power to choose the way we feel, that's when we are in level 4.
I'm going to challenge you right now, Monica.
Okay.
Yeah, the choosing how we feel,
Mm-hmm.
I believe is inaccurate. Our feelings happen, how we choose to move with them or what we choose to shift to or expand into, right? Or let go of or surrender, all these words. Our attachment to because what you brought, I think it's how we're attached to a feeling and how we might have a rinse repeat pattern with that feeling, I think is key here. But feelings arising are just feelings. They are attached to some old experience, belief inside of, we have a circumstance and then we have a feeling about it that we attach to a belief, and then from the belief we take action. That's a coaching framework.
Yeah, it is.
Right. And when we get down underneath that, right, it's do we really have a choice about our feeling? Because feelings are instantaneous. How we choose to respond is where I go, the choosing to respond, and then choose a
I
new
see where
feeling.
you're going. And absolutely, from a perspective, in that moment, it's not about shifting the emotion, but choosing another emotion by raising my energy. Because this is where, if consciousness
Love it.
is where level 4 is, because that's where we are striving for non-judgment, I can choose to be in a lethargy, in an apathy. I can choose to be in a conflict, or I can choose to be in joy. And it doesn't mean, because this is where we learn that it's either or. I can feel grief and I can feel joy. I can feel this and that. And that's where new possibilities arise, because I'm not denying one versus the other. I'm choosing which one I put my attention to in that moment. Therefore, I'm moving through it.
Thank you. I knew that's where you were going to go. And I just wanted the expanded, because that's so supportive, I think, for people to frame up and play with, actually, to kind of be
I don't even know if it makes sense what I'm saying,
It
but
does
anyway.
make sense. You're making brilliant sense, as you always do. It's
what
like,
what I'm hearing is that when I was sitting in my kitchen dreading that I was going to have a miserable night in the emergency room, that was the attached historic feeling that was overpowering me, as opposed to shifting into the opportunity that was being created for me to go to the emergency room and learn everything so we'd have this wonderful discussion today.
yeah.
Well, and
Second
why did
step
you go to
further.
the emergency room, Bill?
Why did I go to the emergency? Well, actually, great. It's actually a great question, right? I went to the emergency room because my wife was hurt.
What were you looking for when you
Her
chose
to get
that?
support.
Great. So you could have chosen to stick to the misery and how hard it is, or you could have chosen to focus on there's the possibility. You already chose it, so you were on the way to it. This is where we are most of the time creating all the conditions for a renewing emotion to come in. We kind of move towards it, but we don't consciously connect to it so that it really feeds us with whatever that renewing motion gives me. It's silly. I keep saying, I go to I'm imagining it's a Saturday evening. I'm finally free. I'm enrolling my husband to take me to a nice restaurant. We are having dinner. I'm ordering dessert. It's coming. And then I'm suddenly saying, I don't have time for this. I need to go somewhere else. Like you're denying the biggest source of renewal, and you already have it there. You put all the effort in it. You're just curious because something else
blinds you to it. Literally blinds you to it until you feel it, escape it, and then see what else is there. I get it. Totally.
That's why savoring, that's why my friend, they say, be present to what is, because when you're present to it, it's right there. You don't need anything else. This is the only way I can actually make peace with impatience, because impatience is a signature I carry throughout my life. And when I slow time, I see what's already there. So I don't have the impression I need to go faster because I'm missing out on the next thing, because the next thing is right in front of me right now. So
Those are all the things.
I
Okay.
I wanna drag Eddie into this.
I know, I was like, Eddie's
You're
sitting
fine.
back there. He's
So yesterday
twisty.
morning, I went down to make coffee, 8 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock or so. Eddie came out of the room and just laid it on me. So Eddie, I'll let you tell your own story.
Well,
As I was thinking through this, I was like, I really want to hear Eddie's perspective on all of this conversation, especially with the
Yeah.
energy that you allowed yourself to feel yesterday.
So what really comes up for me when I think about 1 through 4, it's level of disconnection or connection. When I'm in level 1, I am disconnected from life. I am disconnected from myself. I am in my programming. I am in the crunchy programming, fuck everybody point fingers, like that's the energy. Level 4, like Monica said, surrender, flow, life moving through me, right? We talk about in leadership moving from life happening to me, life happening for me, and I love life happening through me. I'm a part of life. I'm dancing. Yeah, and yesterday I just allow myself to feel some crunchy energy. I didn't need to intellectualize it. Basically, I woke up kind of, I don't know how to describe the energy. I felt annoyed, and I didn't try to fix it. I mean, maybe I could have shifted out of it, like, okay, I got to shift versus, you know what, I'm going about my day. And I mean, what really came up was later, even this morning, was like, you know what, there was a feeling of unworthiness that needed to be felt and seen. And sometimes there's maybe a sense of like, come on, life's happening now, move through it, versus like, all right, I have my own speed too, and how do I balance that? So those are some of the things coming up in terms
What
of
was
like,
what was the lesson from yesterday? What was the life lesson? Yes, the Eddie's highest self, but Eddie's
yeah.
stuck self. Like, what was that gift yesterday?
I told Shelly in the evening that I didn't like the willingness to just listen to what was coming up, the emotion, to listen rather than need to be in solutions or fixing or shifting. Like sometimes pausing and listening leads to the shift. Like, hey, what's going on here? Versus like, I need to be, this a lot of this shifty vibe, I feel to me is like a lot of level 3, where it's like, I'm pretending that I want to be in 4, but I'm still in 3. I'm playing a game. I'm doing mental gymnastics.
Well, can I say something there? And thank you for sharing that, Eddie, because what I hear is I am not shifting without honoring the emotion and the gift that it came with. And that can take a second or moment or day or whatever. And sitting with it is actually understanding why it came. And one thing that the shifting, because there's moments of urgency, like the one that Bill was in, when it's a matter of life that really requires us to be in our best possible self in that moment. And I think that's why there's a muscle that can be shifted, that I spend so much more energy when I am engaging with feelings of sadness, of grief, of there's nothing wrong, there's no labeling. I don't even call them positive or negative. It's just if I desire to be in creativeness of new solutions, knowing that what is not supporting, then at some point I am inviting myself to go there. And the way I do that, I'm asking myself, what do I need to feel whole right now? Because when I do that, I need reinforcement that I matter. Because that's where I don't have what it takes, is my signature victim voice. And
Yeah.
that's and giving myself love may take a day in order to feel loved enough to shift in something else, if that supports me. That's how I go about it. And I agree, a lot of times, because we know this is how we need to be, this is why the word leader and leadership is loaded, because it almost denies the feeling for being in action.
I have a theory. I mean, I want to practice it right now with Eddie and Monica in this space because I heard what I heard through Monica's share was Eddie's share created space for her to have some self-awareness movement, understanding when sometimes sitting in it is the gift, right? So my theory is the minute that I need to shift somebody else because I don't believe they're in level 4, I am not even available anymore to be level 4 myself.
I agree.
Right, because it is different for every single person. I could have told Eddie, look, you're not being level 4, dude. Come on, it's 8 o'clock. It's Monday morning. Fucking level 4 it, right? And sometimes that's the energy it feels like, especially in the container or traditional transformation. And the gift, I think, sometimes is just going, great, let's check in later. I'll see you in the hallway. Right. And we checked in a couple times. Where are you with it? What's coming up? How's it been?
So
Right. And space for Eddie to not judge himself. I believe Eddie was closer to level 4 all day yesterday because he was moving through it, sitting in it, and non-judgment of that. And knowing some of the things that I've experienced of Eddie before, that wasn't always true. So outward appearance to Daryl in the kitchen might have been Eddie's in level 1 or level 2 again. And now my experience of Eddie was, wow, Eddie was in level 3, level 4, and looked the same as it looked 6 months ago. But man, he's showing up to it way differently internally because the discomfort may be feeling the feelings, the discomfort may be sitting with the inadequate story, and letting that guest into the dinner table, the not good enough, sit with him and love him, right? So I love that piece, and I love that it was just exemplified with you two sharing back to back.
And Daryl, I think it's important to echo what you said, because the second I want somebody else to be different than they are, I'm no longer in level 4 because I'm in judgment of what is and what isn't. And then I make the outside a condition for myself to be a certain way. And a way to notice that whether we are in level 4 or not, the desire to be a source for others is generosity. It's from a generosity. There's no condition put there, and that's when it's contagious, and that's when we create the biggest impact, because we are in alignment with our own energy ID, and therefore everything happens naturally without us putting any effort into that. Because when I want to impress you guys with how wise I am, guess what? That's already not level 4 because I have an agenda.
So
When I just selflessly show us sensually eating my fruit and enjoying it, that's when probably I'm in most my power. Because so yeah, and how long we sit with it, well, we live in the economy of attention, so we feel like if we are uh it's this efficiency versus effectiveness. And to me, the effectiveness is how much wisdom can I take out of a thought or experiencing something, rather than how quick can I make this happen, which is efficiency. So
Yeah, and you saying that, Monica, like that little sliver right there reminds me of what is sometimes a dissonance for people learning, right? Because what you guys just all three, Daryl and Monica and Eddie, what you're also framing up a couple of things. I'm gonna rapid fire really quick. It's the importance of actually having people surrounding you who also walk the walk a lot and can understand and be in those spaces. That's community at its finest. We're a house of community. We get to enjoy that every single day. And it's really valuable because I ran into Eddie too in the morning, and it was like, oh, okay. And to echo more of what Daryl said, we've had the gift of close proximity to watching Eddie shift, change, grow, expand in his own life personally. And then we watch him and we get the gift actually of him being himself in his totality, because he doesn't hide like, yeah, just, we didn't just run into each other and he ran off to do his work. He was like, yeah, no, I'm kind of having a shit day. This is what it is for me. And to hold the space for somebody, that's that community aspect too, whether that's with friends, family, partners, business peeps. Like I want to highlight that piece. and then this other about like being able to give space to what is happening, because Eddie could easily, and maybe he is today and he can speak into that, like that economy of like, well, I got to get it together because somebody else needs me too. Like that's what I mean about like people being able to really live into what's truly theirs in again, gracious and conscious and kind way for others. But sometimes like Eddie could still be in his room today kind of being like, I don't want to deal with these things because I'm processing. And do others around you give that space? Do you give that space to yourself? Like these elements of something might take 10 minutes to work through, something may be like 4 days in. And where do we judge ourselves and others for not, getting to it quicker? Or why is it taking you so long? And maybe you should learn a new process because it shouldn't take that long. Like all these stories that I've heard both inside myself and with others. I wanted to bring that aspect into these things. Like how do you each individually? Because I know for myself, I'm a little bit of a sticky widget that way. I take my loving myself is a priority to me at this point in my life. So I know also that can create whatever stories for those around me, right? And this goes into that my level 4 responsibility for all things, like I'm needing to pay attention that there's others, that I am creating something in them. I don't have say over it. I don't have control over it, but I'm aware of it. That's the conscious piece. And I also, if I know I'm working through something that maybe needs to remove me from others, because that's going to source that energy and me fill myself up to the degree that I will be both my own joy and the joy to others potentially, that cycle, like there's no time on it. And I think what Eddie, we're bringing forward this, like the world is demanding something of us. People around us demand something of us, perception, but it's a sticky place for us that we get caught in that, like, so say more, Eddie, for you, like how that's showing up for you differently.
So let's do a vibe check on Eddie this morning. I came to the insight that my wounds, the things that I come back to, that I have judged myself for, like, man, I should have already moved past this, or why do I keep coming back to this? I come back to it because that's what reminds me to come back into my heart. My wounds are there to remind me. They're a portal, an entrance back in connecting with myself, one of the many ways. So it was, for me, it was the reminder, yeah, that worthiness wound, that's part of my existence. Not like a victim-y kind of way. It's like, it's a companion. It teaches me. The medicine is there. So yeah, today I'm not in that energy. And I know that it's all good. It's good that I allowed myself that space and to drop in, because it brought a valuable lesson.
Is it getting easier for you from your perspective? Like, are you finding, and I don't mean easy, is it getting easier? Is there more flow to finding that space?
There's more grace. There is more capacity. The window that my nervous system, there's a term for it, but like how much I'm able to experience and handle grows. I wouldn't say it gets easier. The level of discomfort I'm able to embrace has grown.
Love that.
Is it fair to say that we all have our rackets, the things that are subconscious in us?
Yeah.
The more we can take time to recognize them, embrace them, Eddie, like you just so beautifully said, and learn from them, the more we're living in level 4 all the time, because it also gives us that ability, again, Eddie, as you just so beautifully said, and I wrote down, to actually accept discomfort, a greater amount of discomfort, because we know that's when we grow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I wanted to put your mittens on for the hot stuff that I'm about to dish out. I actually believe that when I am in efforting and in a story about how I need to contribute, or any sort of like intellectualizing of showing up, I'm not actually level 4, because level 4 for me is really that surrender to life, that flow of life. I don't even need to like intellectualize. It calls me forward, and the the natural expression of my living life is an answer to the level 4. But that's come through years of being in my head, like, oh, am I doing it right? Versus showing up to a situation, showing up where, sometimes, like the first half of this, I was just vibing.
Monica, what were you gonna?
Yeah, I like where Eddie is going, that, with the minute you are thinking, how do I have to contribute? Then you are not in your purpose already, because you feel there's something missing that you need to do in order to be fulfilled,
or figure out.
Yeah.
or figure out, and what I shifted from in the past is, how can I be at my best? How can I be true to what's actually occurring in me and with me? And if I consciously am aware that I'm connected to everything around me, what's mine, what's not, which is something that you, Shelley, brought out, because having an open head and an open solar plexus, there's a lot that's going through me that's not mine, and that I keep being busy with, which is, there's some questions that are other people's questions that I take to be mine, and then because I cannot find an answer to them, they become the nightmare of my life, and I'm fucking stuck. So
Which is so vital in a whole nother conversation that we get to
I was
bring
gonna
into
say,
these,
yeah.
all these different important
Here's what I want to do.
finding ourselves.
Here's what I do want to do with that statement is I want to call back to Bill. He told us the story about the emergency room, and then when you had asked a question about knowing what's yours, what's not yours, he asked for clarity. So, Bill, I would love to take you back to the emergency room, and I'd love for you to revisit the question Shelley presenced, sit with what's yours and what wasn't yours, and then bring you to the question I asked Eddie. What was the lesson? I have a couple that popped up for me listening to this based on your story, but I don't want to put words in your mouth till I hear yours. What did that literally was the greatest gift of the emergency room?
So one thing, and in processing last night in this conversation, which has been hugely supportive. So thank you very much, because it maybe, part of the reason it all occurred really was so we could get in this conversation, because one of the being an analyzing supporter, right? One of my things is the purely abstract gets a bit lost, and I need to have places to tie it back to experience so that in my mind I can connect it and then recognize it the next time. And so this has been very supportive for that. I give you a great example. I went from level 1, not so sure level 2 was there, but I spent a lot of time in level 3. And in level 3, I was, as Monica just said, and Eddie, I was trying to start giving as opposed to taking. I was trying to show up in a much more supportive and way. But sometime in the night, I went to level 4 because a few things happened. One, I didn't know I did. Two, I was suddenly awake and kind of aware. I was exhausted all night, tired, thinking. Suddenly I wasn't thinking about that anymore, right? And that was a big shift. Now, being able to go back and see it and see the shifts gives me a lot of clarity in how I work internally when I'm working through these things, and a lot of clarity in this notion of trying and pushing and forcing instead of surrendering. And interestingly enough, I can't quite picture, I'm still processing, sometime around 2:33 in the morning, I surrendered, and without knowing it shifted, because that energy shift was there and I felt it through my aliveness and my awareness. That was a huge gift and clarity. As far as what was mine and what wasn't, I'm, maybe my analyzer in my head is too powerful still here, um, because part of the energy I did have to take energy in from that emergency room to recognize other people's suffering and recognize in myself the that level one was living inside me, that I was feeling it, that it was petty, that I was being annoying, angry, and as we've said, right, even though I'm trying to push it out in level three, it wasn't showing up because inside of me, I was being totally inauthentic. I was totally disconnected. And so I also recognize that now, and that's a very powerful gift. Certainly what was mine was to create the most hopeful, supportive, beautiful environment in that area that I was affecting with my wife and my stepdaughter and the caregivers who we were interacting with. That was certainly mine. So I can see that part of it. I'm still a bit unclear on what wasn't mine. So I'd love to ask for support. What's coming up with everybody with that? Oh, Shelly.
I want to really quickly contrast because because I can tell, Bill, that you're like, I'm still trying to stitch together what that really means. Well, where Jen went, which was beautiful, about talking about like being a parent and talking about, are you a resource or a demand on something? I want to weave that together with what you were saying, because I want to highlight that what occurred for you last night, I would dare say there was nothing that wasn't yours to not take part in. And so it's a good contrast, because like Jen's bringing forward as a parent, she's going, well, sometimes I'm finding myself generating something for my children that maybe they're not needing to have generated, and it becomes a demand on them versus, and so Jen doing the like, do I need to do that? Is that really mine to do or not to do? So that's more in the thread of where I was going. So I know it's probably a little confusing at first when you're like, what do you mean what's not mine? Because really there wasn't really a choice. I don't believe there was much of a choice. You could have chose to say, you know what, honey, you go to the hospital, call me when you're done. Let me know if I pick you up, right? Like that is a choice. That
it
is
is absolutely
somebody could take.
And so in level one, that does run through your mind.
You could be like, not my problem and not my monkey, not my circus. But does that support a little bit in kind of contrast to the like?
Absolutely. So Eddie, Daryl, I want to know what lessons came up for you that you heard. I want to see if I can.
And I'll tie it back to the what's mine, what's not mine as well. So level one for me is none of this is mine. None of this is mine, right? Level four is all of this is mine. Ooh, all the lessons, all of it's mine, right? As I listened to your story, you shared about the elderly people that were there, and you tied it to losing your father. And when you said it, I felt the joy of all the memories you've shared with us about your father. I felt the missing of him. The last time you saw him was in a similar place. All of that came up for me. You talked about the young woman that was walking through the hall around that you believe was maybe on drugs, right? And the compassion for her being able to just have her space to make whatever sound she was making and do all of this. But what I tied it to was you said if you've raised 4 boys, you've spent a lot of time in emergency rooms. So right away, as a father of 2 boys, I went, man, to see somebody on drugs in an emergency room, the first thought I have is, are my kids safe? Are my kids in danger of being that woman in that hallway? Like, so all of these stories were tied to all these beautiful experiences of love and joy and opportunity and how to love your sons deeper, even though they weren't even anywhere in the proximity. How to love your father deeper, even though nowhere in the proximity. Like, if we would have told you 6 months ago when you were going through all of the things that you had gone through, how much joy you would find in an emergency room. You'd be like, I hope I never go into another hospital in my life. Might have been the answer. But when I think of the supporter you are, when I think of the rock you are, when I think of the serviceman that you've been in your life, you're the guy I want in the emergency room with me. Calm, cool, collected. Everybody's grounded, everybody's seen, you're asking the questions. If I'm going to the emergency room, I want you walking in there with me. Right? All of it felt like the gift.
And Monica, go, but please remind me to just something that just came up right there, Daryl.
No, you go, because that's precious. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, here's a tidbit for you. When I was and talk about how I've shifted since leadership and before. When I was going through my divorce and we were trying to save our marriage and we were working with a marriage counselor, the comment the marriage counselor said to me and my soon-to-be ex-wife was, Bill, I would follow you into battle anywhere, but I wouldn't want to be married to you. How was that? Talking about not understanding your energy and misusing it, right, is what I was getting to there, and
Totally.
not being in level 4.
And you know, as we go through this, and this is a big gift. Thank you, Daryl and Bill, for this last conversation, because, and what tying it with what Eddie said, because when we are at our best in that moment, what we can do is be with the other. And how we are with the other is different in every moment. And what happens most of the times in this modern society, we are encouraged to be to have empathy, yet we don't have the capacity of emotional regulation in that moment to still discern what's ours and what's not, and then we become overwhelmed, and then we need to fix. And the alternative, or what we get to shift, is in compassion, which is being with, because when I'm with you, then I can provide, just by being with you, whatever it's needed, either safety, love, encouragement, acceptance, whatever is. But it's not coming from a desire to fix, but it comes from, I am because you are, I am because we are. And when you feel better, I feel better. Therefore, when I feel better, I'm with you until you feel better. Because that's what level 4 is always taught to us in isolation, but actually it becomes relevant when we are in the net of everything, because we are all influencing each other. So that's where, to me, when we say I am responsible for everything, is because the breath that I take will determine a reaction at the other side of the world, because of all the interconnections that exist. Therefore, the more I'm in alignment with my breath, the more I can make the space be closer to what I desire it to be.
Preach
Wow.
it, girl.
I was going to
Preach
say,
it.
wow.
Amen.
Because that
Totally.
I was like, thank you
Wow.
for bringing that into the conversation. And Jen, I can see you over there. I can see the wheels turning.
No, I mean, Monica, that was just really beautiful, and holy, what I'm just amazed by the whole conversation. But I think about like Eddie and what you're going through yesterday, and then Daryl, what you were talking about, how like the moment you try to interject or fix or do whatever, like you fall out of level 4. I think the question I then have for all of us, what does it look like then, or what would it look like for you, Eddie?
Mm.
Like I think I know I have my own answer for what I think would, how I would want the situation to be, if I was going through the day like you had yesterday, and I have those days. But what kind of question would have like maybe energized you or resourced you, or given these are the words that we're using today, that would have supported you in that moment, versus like, what's wrong? What's going on with you, Eddie? Or I know you don't get that in your house because you
No.
amazing remedies.
What supported, simply enough, was Daryl asking if it was anything in particular, but also the way he asked it was recognizing it could just be an energy, like it wasn't a particular thing at the source of it, which made me felt understood, that like, oh, the question comes from a place of, is it something in particular, or is it, just an energy that you're moving through, rather than what's wrong.
Yeah. And I think, and so the reason I bring that up is because I think as we're even looking at these different levels, and we're talking about, being resourceful or being demanding, the question that we can ask in how we're choosing to be with somebody else can feed into, or take away from that experience. And so I'm really glad that you brought that up, Daryl, and that we're talking about all these different aspects today. And thanks, Eddie, for sharing your day. Because I think all of us can relate to something like that. What stood out for me was, and Monica, you've actually done this. So, hey, some is checking in, right? So the whole fact of being seen, I think is like a baseline that I feel works really well, without having to actually go into, well, but what's the story behind it? And, okay, now, because then now you're like taking your feet, you're taking away my energy that I really need to figure out and be in. And so, I I wanted to just bring that up because, you know, as we're even looking at this, and many of us coach and support and help each other and so forth, is to one, ask ourselves what are the ways that maybe we're contributing, but might be a demand, right? But then two, for me, what could that be? And if I can communicate that with others, how can that also improve the quality of what it is I want to create with them, right? And I think about that from a marriage standpoint, from a mom standpoint, from a friend standpoint, etc. So
What
I'll
I
leave it.
what I hear you say, Jen, is curiosity is the biggest gift you can give to a person who's moving through something, rather than assuming that you already feel what they need. And I think this is a a big trap that we are experiencing, with so many people wanting to help and being now in the capacity of having a voice, is thinking that we know and we understand what the other goes through, and that's bullshit. And the best gift we can give is asking them questions that support them to feel seen, heard, and cherished. And this is where I cite a big mind and heart who's here in the room, Daryl, who's making me feel much clearer about this. Because when I hear people, well, I want to empower you, I call bullshit on that too, because I cannot empower you. I can support you feel empowered because you get your power, I get mine. We are equal in that. And what I can do is to be a mirror for your own power until you reconnect with it and stand in it. And what you need for it is, I'll let Daryl speak into that because he is the best person to speak.
Well, the thing that came up for me right away was yes to everything Jen shared, and then be willing to throw it out in the moment, right? Eddie and I have had several mornings in the kitchen with same energy. Maybe I was holding it and he was supporting me, or vice versa, right? If I would have just showed up yesterday the way I've showed up other times, he'd be like, Jesus, is he just checking boxes with me? Right? Even though we know each other and have this relationship, I can't just say this solution worked last time. It's going to work today. I had to really check in with myself and go, what does this moment need? Not what does Eddie need when he's upset? What does this moment need? And it might be a moment where Eddie has upset, or he's moving upset in his body, right? And what the semantics of this comes back to a resource, right? I shared this with Shelly this morning before the call. Is for me, I break it up into resource, and source. Source again. How can I source this again in this new moment? Like Eddie was having a new moment that may be similar to others, and going, how can I be a resource? How can I source again the support? And I think, if I remember correctly, the last thing I said to him was, and it's all divine. Like, I didn't need to fix it. He didn't need me to fix it. He wanted to be heard. We chatted about it, all the things. And then the moment was divine. It was what it was intended to be. And that's, I think, where we get to share ourselves, share curiosity, ask questions, be in the moment. It's that Kairos time versus Chronos time, right? We've talked about time a lot here in a very linear way. But, Jen, with the kids, maybe you don't need more time with them. What if it was just deeper time with them? Because that's really what you're creating in the lesson. At least that's what I was hearing, is I want to have a deep moment with you, not I need 5 minutes with you to teach you this lesson. It may feel like that, but that's not what came across, at least in the share, when you brought that example forward.
You know what I love about this? You know what we're now talking about? The last stage of enrollment. How to support.
Hey.
We've shifted all the way around.
Well, I want to highlight, because I'm going, wait, because something really important that I want to keep pulling out, because we're focusing, because I had the encounter that I had with Eddie in the morning, and something that I want to highlight is that I'm the feeling one often in the house that's like, okay, the temperature of the house changed, what the fuck is going on? And I don't have information, I just know, right? And so I'm like, okay, well, what is the responsibility in me as a being, period, with whomever? And I want to highlight this is about not making it about yourself. First and foremost, step one, don't make it about you, and order to create space that is allowing somebody to feel seen, heard, and cherished on some level, which just kind of, because I asked Eddie, you know, it was like, ooh, or I don't even know, maybe Eddie just said something. Our whole encounter, I was just kind of like, I was in wherever I was, anything going on for Eddie, because even later in the afternoon, he came up, you know, and said a thing like, still in that. And I'm like, it's all cool because I was just in the presence with myself. There was nothing that was going on for Eddie that I needed in any way to even process. Is this about me? Is it not? Did I say, what am I going to say? To even Daryl's point, just being the love that I know I am, to just be like, I see you, I love you if you need something, and how we frame each opportunity that will always be different to arise to that moment and be like, yeah, what is this moment calling for? Maybe Eddie wanted space because him and I often talk about out there things that Daryl and him don't talk about. And so, you know, I go, oh, could I have created more of that opportunity? Maybe, but I'm like, but I would have been making it about me. So it's this like highlighting our individual selves getting more and more astute at being present, like you're saying, Monica. Like presence is just so freaking key. Present to what is happening for us first and foremost, because we're the ones in this perspective with the outside things, and then understanding we're co-creating with others in ways that energy that breathe in and out, what I do does affect Daryl, it does affect Eddie, it does affect someone else. I'm not responsible for how they take and respond to it or react to it, but I am in conscious awareness that what I say, do, and be in myself is going to have a ripple, both in close proximity and a much larger context, because that's another conversation. But this, bringing it back to like, I want to encourage anyone hearing this, you know, it's like, come back home first, come back home here in any situation. Because even Bill in his night last night, once you're not thinking and you are, whether consciously or not, but noticing that the heart space is what opens up, and then things start to kind of blossom from there, and it's not all this mental thinking. Go ahead, Monica. Yeah.
This is where, Shelley, coming home, and in this moment, I feel so home. And so I'm looking at, why do I feel that? And it's because we are living and breathing into tantaMAS intention, which is having these intellectual conversations that allow us to really be in appreciation for what was, and will always be. And through bringing the reality of the present moment to the theory of leadership, we expand and grow in a way that we otherwise couldn't. And I'm curious, how does Bill look at his own story that he brought so authentically and vulnerably to us? So thank you, Bill. How has this conversation shaped the way you look at it right now?
Thank you. So a couple things come up for me, and this has been so fascinating. So the first one is, we went and started to define step 6, the final step of enrollment, right? Being supportive of people on their journey of leadership, which we're going to create a whole class on, because that's not really covered in leadership. And yet this conversation shows you why it's so supportive. And at the same time, all it does is reinforce that step 1 of leadership is the most important step, because that is the step of coming home. And so for me, as I go through last night and I think about last night as an enrollment, right, in me being in level 4 responsibility, right, which is really interesting because the two flow right together. I was not in step 1 through much of the evening, there, not being present, not being authentic inside and out. And that held back the success of becoming the just authentic giving person of level 4 responsibility in a situation where, you know, luckily, thank God it wasn't life or death, but still very uncomfortable for two people. And I went from it being very uncomfortable for me to, at the end, I was very comfortable because I was focusing on creating comfort for the two people that were involved in this situation, being my wife and her stepdaughter, who by 4 a.m. was exhausted and because she had worked all day. And so seeing that shift and bringing those two things together, and then also just how one thing that also dawns on me here is how easy it is to slip out of being present and being authentic in the world we live in, right? Which, Eddie, is exactly what you were speaking to. And how we really have to stay connected with ourselves to recognize that and to be able to then process to get back there. Because if you're not in step one of enrollment, if you're not enrolled in yourself and you're not home and you're not authentic and you're not in your life, very little is going to be successful in what you're trying to create during at any given time.
I want to add something, Bill, that I find it the interesting time that we are alive, that we actually chose, my belief is that we chose to be here. And we've chosen a time filled with so many seeming distractions that actually, what a powerful exercise to come back home and intentionally be home, given everything that happens around us.
That couldn't be a better closing. Because we are going to be here all day again. And what I want to wrap up with is thank you, each of you, again, for your beautiful hearts. Minds are incredible, but I love your hearts more than I love your minds. Your minds follow your hearts. But can we, each of you, I'd love to hear if there's 3 to 4 words or a sentence that just is what today created for you, how you're feeling, something that just in short, what is that for you? And Eddie, I'll let you.
Feel seen. I didn't expect my day yesterday to, make its way here, and yet it's perfect and beautiful to share that. So, I feel a contribution by sharing that vulnerable piece of my life.
Jen.
Well, Bill, thank you for sharing all of what you went through, only because well, it's interesting because yours is emergency. Mine is I'm preparing for my mom's surgery tomorrow. And so how I am able to control that, but still freak out underneath it. And then go back to, all right, what can I do? Who can I be? Just to see and then everyone's discussion today, from accepting the discomfort to, reminding myself of how I get to be resourceful to myself and to my mom, and well, to my dad too, because he's on maintenance right now. Just all the things. I think it was very meaningful for me today. So thank you, everybody.
Monica.
What a gift. And this is what I know, that juices are flowing. And then when juices are flowing, I know I'm resonating with the truth. And what I know is how level 4 responsibility feels. Because when I'm beyond judgment and I'm present, I'm already in level 4, because then I'm not tied to any story of how it needs or how does it require. I just am in connection with everything around me. And then I am going to show up in the best meaningful way to support what gets to occur or what gets to be maintained. So level 4 feels juicy and non-judgmental.
Love it. Daryl.
We talked a lot about seen, heard, and cherished, and it was just a big indicator for me to know that in order for Daryl to be seen, heard, and cherished, I get to show up, I get to speak up, and I get to share myself, so that there's an ability there for you guys to find something to cherish in my shares. And a lot of times when I coach around level 4, the 4 levels of responsibility, I try to do it with be in pursuit of, right? Because it softens that self beat up that I do for myself. And here I sat for over an hour, however long this ends up being, in the feeling of level 4 and not needing to be in pursuit of chasing level 4. So thank you all for that experience, because that's new in a lot of ways to just be in it for that long without intellectualizing it or chasing it.
How about you, Bill?
Connected, very connected right now. I love how the six of us connect in these conversations and what we could create and the journeys we walk through when we're connected here, present with each other. It's why I love being here. It's why I love working with all you, and I appreciate you all and have so much gratitude for you all. And so gratitude, huge amount of gratitude right now. Feeling seen and heard in processing last night and getting support on that, really appreciative of that. And that feeling brings me joy inside, right? A lot of joy and a lot of optimism. I feel a lot of optimism on what my life is going to do, what we're going to create. So just really powerful and very, very appreciative of everyone. Thank you all so much. I love you all.
Callie?
I wanted absolutely to go last because I love Bill and everybody's like, I'm like,
Wrap it
oh,
up.
please. Yeah, it's like yum, 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 meow, like all good. It's all the same. Of course, like really, really being the love that we are here, that we each individually are, the connection that is true. It's just, it is, and the appreciation and gratitude that each of us shows up as, I believe, ourselves, and that there is non-judgment and there's acceptance and actually celebration of that, because that's a key important one for me. So I'm like, I just see it in all of us and love and appreciate that. And our greatness. I see our individual greatness and I see our collective greatness and the things that allows just by being authentic to that and not denying it, not gloating about it, but not denying it. And Monica, you started with that piece of you being able to be like, wow, I got to see my own greatness and accept it for a moment. That's the feeling. Like, that's the one that I want to just put in a big heart bow, and that all of us, that is what this is. We do it all the time. We're recording this, but how precious that actually is. It's precious to me. I'm eternally grateful as well for each of you. Yeah, Monica, go ahead.
Can I say it felt so good to have you in the conversation, Shelley? For me, the previous, it felt so incomplete. It felt so odd. This is you owning your contribution in this space makes it be what it's meant to be. And I'm glad we are at this point where you invite us each to own it, and that means you own it. So thank you for being here.
All of you for that, but thank you, Monica. You always put beautiful, warm words on it. So I take it. I receive.
Hey, I feel warm and fuzzy right now. I'm just letting it out.
Oh, okay. Well, on that, I'm gonna wind down the rest of our moment. Thank you guys for being who you are. Till next time. There's always a next time. There's always so much more. The tantaMAS way. This is community. This is community.
Come on, y'all.